Hey guys, Teragi here, and if you're here, you're probably as excited as I am for OP13 to finally go away, and with OP14 just being a few weeks away now, I thought I'd go ahead and just write up a tier list here. This is one that I think will be super interesting for us just because the West format is going to be a bit different, really maybe even a lot more different than what the East is doing, just because we're getting access to EB04 early and we don't have access to EB03. So there'll be a more diverse meta from OP13 where it was heavily a dice roll meta. Whoever you matched up with, whether you went first or second, it was a pretty big impact, more so than the actual gameplay. So it'll be very refreshing to see more leaders pop in and be competitive. And with it being so early, again, this hasn't even been released. East doesn't have this yet. This is just my initial outlook on the meta, just based on what I've read and what I've seen. From the cards that have been announced. Things are going to change. It's still super early on, and as always, player familiarity, player knowledge with certain leaders will always make it outperform whatever tier I have it in. This is just my opinion, and it's definitely going to change as we get more access to more information and people start playing these leaders more and more. Once that happens, I'll definitely make an updated version and let you know my thoughts from what the initial placements were to what they would be going forward. And so what you'll see here is I already have the OP12 to 14 leaders placed out into these different tiers. And so before I go over these leaders, I just want to take a few minutes to go over what each of these tiers mean and why things are getting placed in each of these tiers. So at the very top here, you'll see the meta definers. See the meta definers, and so those would be the strongest decks in the format. These are the decks that really shape what other leaders are playing, have pretty good to really good matchups across the board, and actively shape, again, what people are playing, what they're teching into. And yeah, I mean, these are just the best of the best. Doesn't get simpler than that. Right under that tier is going to be the top contenders. These are proven competitive decks, or decks that I think will be very strong. They would typically be featured in the top cut, but as of right now, I don't think we have any events in OP14. So these will just be decks that will be strong in general, and hopefully going forward, they will maintain that same strength. And so once they win these events, if we have them, it shouldn't be super surprising. The tier right under that is the high variance tier, and so these are still powerful decks with strong matchups across some of the leaders right above them, a lot of the leaders in the same tier and below, but are maybe affected by consistency, whether that be with the deck itself maybe not having enough searchers, not having enough tools, or it could be matchup spread where, you know, it's really strong into these two leaders, but it's really weak into these two other ones, and so depending on what they're matching into, it could be a really good tournament or a really bad tournament, really dependent on a lot of factors. And so over a longer event may not be as reliable, but still could have that dream run. You never know, right? And so right under that is the locals menace tier, and so these are fun decks, very strong decks that can perform well in the right environment depending on what other people at your locals are playing, but again, may struggle to maintain consistent results in that more competitive level. Right under that, we have the EB03 waiting room, and so these are decks that may have some success now, but will really start to shine once EB03 is available for us in the West. We can still talk about what some of them would be placed in otherwise and where I think they could end up being, but for now, EB03 waiting room. We'll see what happens once we get that information. And then the last tiers here would be Rogue and Untested. These are decks that either need more support to be competitive, to even be viable, or really just need more testing. Maybe there just hasn't been enough testing for these leaders, and maybe once we have access to this new set list, placements could change, right? Maybe someone cracks a formula for a leader that isn't played a lot, and they shoot up the tier list. But for now, what we'll do here is just go over the OP12 through 14 leaders, the ones that we already have placed there, and then from there we'll just go over each of the sets, so from OP11 down to OP01. And so I'll probably break this up just because it is a lot of different leaders. You can definitely skip ahead. I'll have timestamps across, but without further ado, let's go ahead and just get right into it. So starting us off, we have Mihawk, one of the new leaders in OP14 that hard counters a lot of the slash decks that we're seeing, like Zoro and Roger. Very aggressive, applies a lot of pressure, freezes boards with Perona and Mihawk, has 7-cost Shanks that slots in perfectly and will be used with a lot of other green decks, but with the way Mihawk is set up is going to be very perfect for him. Very consistent across the board with very few bad matchups. Purple Dofi might be the worst one for him, but I don't think we'll be seeing too many of him. Right there with him is Boa Hancock, again one of the new leaders in 14. Her leader ability punches opponents for clearing her board, making them take a life. If you trigger body out by accepting a life as Boa, you get to draw a card, runs a lot of triggers, so that happens more often than not. Goes wide very, very quickly and converts Rested Dawn into big swings with Ran and Gorgon Sisters, so very, very powerful. And last but not least, that 9-cost Boa that came out is insane. Easily one of the best cards that's been released in 14 and easily makes Boa one of the best leaders in the format. Right after her is Ace, still very, very consistent leader from OP13. Builds up a massive hand size, controls the board with, Atmos, Jozu, draws cards back with Marco, and then closes out with a bunch of 12k bodies, your blocker Whitebeards, your Rogers, your 9-cost Whitebeards. Nothing flashy, really, nothing new for Ace, but still very consistent, very much a grindy deck. Expect to see a lot of him up there. Last in the meta definers list is Emu, who's still a monster when going second, still very, very powerful. Once those elders start coming out, it's pretty hard to stop him. Not a lot of change for him in OP14, but Ground Death, courtesy of Crocodile, does help him out with more counter. Continues to stop the removal-based decks, which is why he's up here in the meta definers list, and very much a pillar of the meta defining leaders here. Fun as well as the live action Zoro. Makenyu just placed top 8 in one of the Japan Championship Series. Just thought that was cool. But yeah, let's move on then. Speaking of the live action Zoro, let's talk about the OP12 Zoro here. Very aggressive, still maintaining that mid-range style that he had in OP13. Pretty bad into Mihawk, but again, that makes perfect sense. Everything else is still pretty good for Zoro, still pretty strong and favored. And I think the West, especially in the US, really prefers Zoro, kept him going through 13, so I expect a lot of strong representation for him, even though he is maybe a step below where he was prior. Right there with him is one of the new leaders again, Gecko Moria, and this is where the spice starts to come in, right? Initially, when this leader was announced, didn't really have a lot of traction, seemed very expensive leader ability, trashing tree cards from hand, but if you really think about it, with a lot of the blue leaders like Boa and Ace still being around, being able to be pudding proof is super nice. And this leader runs the Thriller Bark engine that a lot of other yellow decks are running as well, stalling games with the Perona, gaining life through his leader ability, and 8-cost Moria. It runs the 9-cost Boa as well. Has very high skill ceiling, and the way I see this is, with so many yellow decks running the Thriller Bark engine, why would the main guy that uses his engine not be good as well, right? So that's why I have him up here. Moving forward here, we have Goldie Roger, finally getting the promo support in the West, but I think at this point it might be a little bit too late for him. Still going to be strong, but just like before, right? If you high roll, and there's very few decks that can stop you, but I just think it's a bit too late for him. Maybe I'm wrong. But yeah, we'll see. Right after that, we'll have Sabo, mid-range deck, floods the board, put up a bunch of blockers, buffs all of them plus 1k power, plus cost, controls with Stussy, controls with Hack, closes out with that Roger. Reason it's high variance is just depending on the matchups. Some of them it's really good into, some of them are not so good, but definitely capable of sneaking top cuts, placing well as long as you're able to duck some of those bad matchups. Right after that is Jinbei, one of the new leaders from OP14 that I think is a lot of fun just from what I've played. Mid-range and trashes cards from hand to attach these Dons for bigger swings on the field. Fisher Tiger mitigates a lot of that, making you go down to 5 no matter what, so it's like it is what it is, you're drawing cards. And again, with putting decks being so prevalent in the meta, I don't think it's that big of a deal to trash these cards. Very fun deck, very capable, I think, but we'll see where it ends up actually placing once it's released. And then last in this list for the 12 through 14 leaders is Doflamingo, who I think is a very strong fundamentals deck with that classic purple Dawn manipulation, you know, minusing Dawn to do a powerful ability, getting Dawn back through different characters, things like that. The redirecting attacks is fun. It'll definitely, again, be a very fundamentals heavy check. Players will really just have to play smart against him to be able to beat him, but will definitely steal a few wins for people that don't really know. Struggles into Ace and Emu, which caps him from being placed higher in my opinion, but is still a very strong deck. Moving forward here is Bonnie. Not a lot of changes for her just yet. That may change in EB03. Unfortunately, a lot of the Egghead leaders aren't seeing as much support as we were thinking from the ST29 Luffy leader that's coming out very soon, but still pretty solid. Can absolutely be a terror as long as you're hitting the right triggers and finding what you need. Yeah, very top of the locals menace tier for me. Right after that, we have UP Sanji. This is getting a lot of new support with EB04 with Stealth Black. That lets you play out a Sanji from trash. You have the 2-cost Pudding. You have new Searchers. You have Terracotta for unblockable. It's still waiting for Reiju to really pop off and start playing events from trash, but I think it is very playable and will be very fun. It's definitely one that I'll be trying out for sure. Right after that is going to be Rayleigh. Not a lot of changes for him either. Still very aggressive. It was kind of pushed out by Emu and Ace in 13. I think people dropped him more than they maybe should have. I think it's still very strong, but placement really depends on how much people are actually playing him. Right under that, we have Red Green Luffy, who's still ultra defensive, is getting a lot more support now in 13 and onwards, and can really hang in there for as long as he needs. And if he has that opportunity to go wide, will definitely take games, but will ultimately get a lot better once the promo Robin comes to the West. If it comes to the West, I have no idea how long that's going to be. In the meantime, I think there's like a 3 or 4 cost Luffy that you can slot in as a replacement and maybe just tech in something else. After that, we have the new Crocodile leader. This one is black and really board control focus. You have sticky threats like the 8-cost Crocodile, where you can just trash a card to play it right back out. Struggles hard against Ace and Emu like a lot of other leaders, keeping him from being really relevant, but it's still interesting. I think this is one where, as people test it out, maybe they find a formula that really works for him, but for now, I'm not really sold on him being any higher than just where I have him at right now, at the end of that locals menace tier. Moving forward here, we have the EB03 rating room. Right now, the only member I have in that is Rosinante, who's a fun Trafalgar Law heavy deck that isn't really competitive right now. There's some EB03 support coming for it, but even then, it still looks pretty rough for him. I don't know that this is a leader that'll be good anytime soon, but if you're a Trafalgar Law fan like he is, maybe this is the deck for you. And then for the last few leaders we have here from 12 through 14, we have the OP14 Trafalgar Law, kind of the red-headed stepchild for the leaders in OP14. Everything else has seen more favorable placement, but I haven't seen too much for Law. Very interesting, lets you swap power values for Supernova or Heart Pirates characters. Being Slash, of course, makes it tough into Mihawk, but people really like red decks from what I've seen. The West is really fond of Law. I mean, who isn't, right? And so maybe if someone takes the time to figure out a list for him, could be a sleeper, but for now I'll just put him in the untested category more so than Rogue. Right after that, we have Kuzan, who's a removal deck and an anti-removal meta, a lot of sticky bodies, a lot of cards that prevent removal. So struggles across the board just because of that, and would need maybe a starter deck to help support him, or just Navy support in general to help him out. And then last one here is Koala, who is an effect-based Punisher. If your opponent plays out cards via effect or plays an 8 cost or more, they have to take a life, but by the time that happens, it's usually too late for Koala to really do anything. If you really want to play a revolutionary army leader, I think Sabo is almost always better. Yeah, that's it for the ones I have out on the field here. Let's go ahead and start sorting through some of the leaders I have at the bottom. Okay, so for the OP11 leaders, first off we have UP Luffy, and UP being UP will always have some sort of relevance, especially now that Promo Roger is finally available. Similar to the OP13 Roger, that does make it a little bit more relevant, lets it shine once again, and all the counter event that it runs definitely has the tools to sustain long enough to take wins. Struggles into Emu and Zoro, but with the meta being as wide as it's going to be, I don't think that's that big of a problem. I would put it at the end of top contenders here for now. Right after that will be Purple Katakuri, and nothing's really changed for him. He's getting some support in EB03 that could give him a little bit of a boost, but outside of the brief period of shine that he had in PRB02, I don't see him getting past locals here, maybe putting him above the Crocodile. To that is Blue Yellow Nami, finally getting Girl in the OP14 pre-release, which is huge for the Nami fans, one that we've been waiting for months and months and months. But a lot of her real support is coming in EB03, so I'll put her in the waiting room section here. Till then, I'd say this deck is good for locals if you wanted to really play her. I don't think it's bad, but I think it'll really start to shine once we get that EB03 support. Red Black Kobe is in the same situation as Katakuri as far as getting support in EB03 and having that brief period of shine in PRB02, but the only difference here is that I just don't think it's enough to stand on. Katakuri at least had a moment where it was competitive. I don't think Kobe's ever really had that, so I'm going to put him over in the rogue category. Jinbei and Shirahoshi are interesting. Getting some support in EB04 specifically. With Shirahoshi, she's getting some Neptunian support that lets you cycle cards. There's another one that lets you restand Dawn, and then rest an 8 cost or less whenever you're attacking. And then there's the Megalo, which is a 2k counter card that also pops in 8k body. Is very interesting. There's one guy at locals that was playing this for a while, and I do think it can be scary if it gets rolling. Definitely one that I'll be interested in checking out once that support is online in the sim, but for now I'll just put him in the locals menace category here. Maybe above Katakuri, I don't really know. I'm biased by that one guy. So after that we have Jinbei, again getting support in EB04 in the form of blocker Jinbei that plays out a body on KO and then has a 3k counter event that lets you restand a Fishman type character. It's not one that people are really talking about, especially now that Blue Jinbei is available for us, but definitely one that I think is interesting again here. Maybe keep an eye out on it, you never know. For now, I'll just put him in the rogue and untested category. So just to split these up here, I'll put these two as untested, and then I'll have these three as rogue, and we'll update that later on. EB02 GP Luffy, King of EB02, and OP11 is back. Just like before, this deck likes to spam out a lot of those Sanji puddings, play out a bunch of other characters like the Rush Luffy, and then stay safe with the Gum Gum Giant, Thunder Bagua, and Dead Man's Game. There's some new support that it's had in OP13 with the Sanji. There's OP14 that lets you rest an 8 cost or less character. There's the Restanding Dawn. Similar to Red Green Luffy, it's missing that promo Robin to really shine, but I think this deck is a lot stronger than people are giving it credit for. I think it is back for sure, for better or for worse, right? So put him towards the end of the high variance category. I put him above Doflamingo for sure. I don't know if I'd put him above Jinbei. Maybe I'm a little bit Biased with Jinbei being a new leader, but I think that's where I'll have him for now. And so going into the OP10 leaders, first off we have Yellow Kid. Defensive walls, takes opponent's life with the ACOS Katakuri and Basil Hawkins, but for me maybe a little bit too slow for the meta, but we'll see how it goes. I mean, yellow support is pretty prevalent in OP14 onwards, so we'll see where this ends up landing. I do think it is interesting. It's one that I was testing out early on in 12 and 13, but I think have dropped it since then. But for now, I'll put him in the locals menace. I put him maybe above Shirahoshi and Katakuri, but maybe not quite in the same level as these leaders over here. Red Purple Sugar. A lot of Don Quixote support was added in 14, but I think the meta's just evolved too much since she was released. She never really had a moment where she was able to really shine. Very interesting leader, but I think it's just too little too late for her at this point. I'll just go ahead and put her in the rogue tier category. Green Yellow Law is a high skill cap deck that I think is pretty cool. One that's a little bit too hard for me personally and had some shine back in OP11 versus the UP and GP Luffy meta, but just is too slow in my personal opinion. It is getting some EB03 support with Bonnie and Lob, and maybe there'll be something else that comes out in the future, but for now, I just put him in the EB03 waiting room, and maybe we get a starter deck for him in the future. I think that'd be really cool. Last one for OP10 here is Red Green Smoker. It's getting some support coming up with maybe that Tashigi in OP14 and then the other Tashigi in EB03, but I don't think it's really enough for this one. In my opinion, it's pretty outclassed by the other mid-range decks in its category. I'd put this more so in the rogue tier, maybe on the higher end of that. I'd put him here for sure. Let's rearrange some of these. I'd say, yeah, Koala. Yep. Cool. Now, so we're back in OP09, the second anniversary of the One Piece TCG. First off is Purple Yellow Robin, who's a banished leader in a pretty trigger-heavy meta. So I think that's really interesting and definitely has value. I've seen lists that have success with, again, the Thriller Bark engine. Maybe I'm biased towards Gecko Moria because I really like the leader, but seeing all these yellow leaders play, it does tell me something, but we're not talking about him. We're talking about Robin here. It's a purple Straw Hat Pirate leader. Any leader that can run Giant, I think, always has a chance. Lets you cycle a ton of cards. It ramps as well. And so any yellow support that's coming out in OP14 should, in theory, be good for Robin as well. For the time being, though, until some of the EB03 support comes out, I would say it's maybe at Locals Menace, maybe on the high end of that at best, but I'd say until some of that support comes out, I'll just put it in the EB03 waiting room. And I'd say in terms of relevance, I do it this way with Rosinante towards the end there. I think even with the EB03, I don't think that much is changing for him. Next up is Marshall D. Teach, and this is one that you can never count out. It's getting some minor support with Ground Death just because it does trash so many cards, but other than that, just expect more of the same from Teach. Very control-y, and then closes out the game with those 12k 10 drops. You have the Burgess that keeps coming back and back and back. Expect Black Hole, I think, with all the 4-cost characters that are coming out to make a resurgence. Maybe Liberation comes back as well. But outside of random top cuts, again, if we had events going for 14, I wouldn't expect too much to happen with this leader. Put him in the Locals Menace, though, just because I do think it is a very strong deck. And depending on what the scene is at your locals, this could be very good. But otherwise, usually have better options to play. If you're playing black, maybe just play Umu if you like trashing a lot of cards. PB Luffy, maybe I'm a little biased, right? If you've seen some of my videos, but I'm going to put him here at the very top of S tier, number 1 in the format. Buyer Stonks now. This is the best leader possible. Get some support in the form of 8-cost Crocodile and 10-cost Doflamingo, but otherwise we'll just really adjust depending on what the meta is and what the top decks are, especially in your local scene. Might be worth bringing back cards like Top Knot, maybe Gum Gum Lightning, but in all reality, I think it's more so in the high variance tier. Not sure if it's in the top contenders quite yet, but I'd put it maybe somewhere around here. This is interchangeable. I think these are pretty close. I'll put him ahead of Doflamingo, but I think that's just because of my familiarity with this leader. I'll put him here for now. I think it's good. I think there's an argument for either side of this. Yeah. High variance. Next up is Shanks here. Not much to say on him. Not a lot of support coming out for him. Anything he does, I think Roger does better at this point. I just play Roger. Just put him at the rogue category here. Definitely above these, but not by too much. Lim, another one of my goats. We'll put her at the very end of... Not sure. I think maybe top of crowd favorites, high variance leaders. Yeah, I think I put her right here. Should maintain a lot of the success that she was seeing in OP13. Definitely a step below some of these top contenders, but if she can high roll, very, very scary deck, very, very strong deck. Last for OP09, we have Buggy. This is a leader that on paper to me should cook Boa, but numbers really disagree on that. It's still a very removal heavy deck in a meta that has a lot of tools to stop that removal, so it does make it a tough place for him. I think it's a lot of fun, and one that I was playing for a little bit back in OP10, OP11, but just doesn't really have a place right now. I would put him in the rogue category. Okay, so this is where it starts to get a little bit interesting. We got a lot of Animal Kingdom support in EB04, so I think revisiting King and Kaido, it's definitely time to do that. Kaido especially should benefit from the additional ramp options that the Animal Kingdom characters give it. And then there's more protection as well to let it be very aggressive. It's getting another rusher that rests a 7 cost or less, which never hurts, right? Flame Dragon Torch looks like a strong closer and also works as a 4K counter. And with Blast Breath coming out of rotation coming up, I think we'll end up taking its place. TBD if that's going to be enough to put it at the top of any sort of tier list, but for now, I do think it is interesting. I'll put it at the end here of the high variance category, and then for King, his leader ability is a lot more underwhelming versus a Kaido that lets you trash one of your opponent's lives, so I'm going to put him more so in the rogue or untested category. Not really sure what to do with him, but we'll see. You never know, right? Put him in the untested for now. Charlotte Pudding here, which I'm a big fan of. I mentioned it briefly in my last video, but there's no real support that's coming out for it anytime soon as far as we've seen. Maybe there's something that comes out in 15, but I don't really think so since it's more egghead based from what we can tell so far, but you never know, right? I'd say it's pretty stuck in the meta. It has its flaws, but when it high rolls, it does feel really, really good. But when you don't, it's just pretty tough, right? I would put this in the locals menace category just for that. Until it gets some real support, I don't know what else it's going to be really doing. Put it here. Carrot's one of the more interesting ones that we have coming up. Leader effect lets you rest one of your opponent's character with a 5 cost or less as long as you have a Minx type character out on the field, which is a lot of what you're running with Carrot. And even in its current state, this leader has some pretty good matchups into Mihawk and Bonnie, which, you know, with the 6 cost misdumbs that's coming out, lets you go wide pretty quickly. And so by the time you're at 8 cost carrot, you probably have at least one of the 5 cost carrots out that you're able to restand and then keep swinging a full board, freezing multiple bodies. I think it looks really, really good. I think the only thing it maybe struggles with is just consistency in the form of additional searchers, but I think it's flexible enough and you have a lot of options to where maybe that's not as big of a deal as it was before. The way I see this is maybe as a stronger Bonnie, which is a leader that Boa already struggles against, so I would not sleep on this character. I think it's going to be very, very good. Maybe I'm a little bit too high on it, but I'm going to put it at the tail end of the top contenders category. Calgara had a little bit of shine back in OP12, but ultimately still struggles versus Ace and Emu. But with Calgara, there's always one random Calgara that ends up placing pretty highly at an event, so I wouldn't totally count him out just yet, but I'll just put him in the locals menace category for now. Maybe below some of these guys here. Marco hasn't really had anything new since PRB02, and even that didn't move too much for him. There's the 4-cost Marco, but Ace runs it a lot better. There's a few other leaders that benefit from it more. If you're wanting to play a blue-red Whitebeard Pirates leader, I just play Ace. I'll just put this in the rogue category for now, near the top. I don't think it's bad, but you're just better off playing something else. Tony Chopper, the GOAT himself, is coming to the live action coming up 2026, but does that mean he's back in OP14? I don't think so, honestly. The only support it's getting is, I think, the Megalo that it can use since it is considered an animal. But I don't know if that really moves the needle enough for him. But it's still fun to play out a field with 5 different Chopper characters that you're playing, right? So I'll just put him at the rogue category for now. And so now that we have some space here, let's get some of this cleaned up. We'll move rogue here. And then we'll move the untested up here. So, untested, we have these guys. We'll put you down here. Oh, I think I deleted somebody. That's okay, you know who you are. It's okay. If you're down here, maybe we're not missing out too much. Sorry. Let's move on to OP07 now. We have, first off, Green Bonnie, which is a staple in any meta, especially early on into metas. Has really good matchups across the board. It has a lot of support that's coming out in OP14. Namely, you have the Shanks, you have the Tashiki, you have the Nami, you have the Perona. I'd expect her to make some runs for sure. I'll put her in the top cut contender category. Vegapunk is the next one we have here. The Egghead starter deck didn't really do much for Vegapunk, unfortunately, so no Vegabonks anytime soon. Maybe something in OP15 with the Egghead theme, but for now I just put him in the rogue tier. Foxy, the anti-interaction deck, is getting more support with a Searcher and ways to rest and KO even more characters than he could before. The really good Foxy players, people that dedicate time to this leader, know it's already had pretty decent success into things non-named Ace or Emu. So definitely keep an eye out for it. I'll put him right now in the maybe the high variance category. Maybe in front of Kaido here. Right after that we have Boa. I think there's no reason to play this Boa at this point with the new blue-yellow blow out. Put it in the rogue category. Rob Lucci, I don't know, as resistant as it has been to a lot of the other changes and bans that it's faced, I think this is maybe it for Lucci. Personally, I'm not complaining about that too much, but an anti-removal meta with a removal leader makes it pretty tough for him. I put him in the rogue tier category. Maybe an off-meta locals, interesting locals characters could make him good, but I think in any actual competitive scene, he's just not in a good place right now. So next up, we have some of the OP06 and PRB01 leaders. First off, we have Reiju. No real support for this leader. There's the new EB03 Reiju, but that's specifically for Sanji, so I'm going to put this in the rogue tier from now. It was a lot of fun for a long time. Definitely one that you could have brought out, but I don't think it's in that same position now. Unfortunately, maybe we see some change in the future. Green Yellow Yamato is a leader that has tried sticking around a few times, hasn't really left its mark like people were expecting, but the new Wano support looks really good for it, letting you restand your leader and manipulate Dawn for a lot of big swings. EB03 Yamato is also around the corner and won't hurt it at all. I would put this maybe in the high variance category. I don't know if I put it above Foxy. I put it at the end here. I don't think it's in a bad state with the support it's getting in EB04. But we'll see. I've thought it was going to be very good multiple times. I've been wrong so far. Maybe I won't be this time. Maybe I will be. Red Sanji, mid-range aggro deck. Plays out a lot of buddies. Gives them rush. I think just struggles in the current meta, doesn't really have a position for it right now. I'll put this in the rogue category. You have red green Odin now. Can technically run the same support that Yamato does, but doesn't benefit from it nearly as much as she does, just because she does swing big, has the double attack. So being able to restand this leader is a lot more valuable than the Odin here. Maybe rogue category, maybe locals at best, but I think my gut instinct is just put it in rogue. Moving on to OP05, we have Purple Luffy. There's no new support for it, and it's getting, in my personal opinion, outperformed by the other Purple Luffys, like Black Purple, Green Purple, Blue Purple, but it's still a Purple Luffy. Matches well into Boa, but struggles everywhere else unless you can win your dice rolls, so people are going to play it, maybe not as much as before, but people are going to play it. I will put this in the Locals Menace category. I think the people that are sticking with this really know what they're doing and can handle a lot of matchups better than you think, so don't sleep on it. Green Blue Rosinante. There's some Don Quixote support that was coming up that was purple for 14, so it doesn't really do anything for Rosie here. It's green and not slash, so maybe it does well into Boa, maybe it does well into Mihawk, but I don't think it's enough. Maybe I'm wrong, right? I think it's an interesting leader. I will put this in the untested category. I'd rate it higher than King. Maybe I'd do Jinbei, Law, Rosie. No, I think it's still Law. Yeah, I think this is right. Anyways, Enel. Seeing some success right now with once again the Thriller Bark engine, but it's a very small sample size that I've seen, and I think it's more cope than anything else. I think it's just people wanting to play Enel. I don't know what the leader interaction is with the 9-cost Boa, depending on that. What's when your life becomes 0, so I think it's interesting. I guess you don't get the trigger from it if there's a 0-cost event in life, so I guess that's good. But personally for me, I think it's just cope. And it really hasn't seen success in a while, so maybe Enel finally is dead. But it's still Enel. I'll put him in the locals tier, somewhere around here. Fellow Betty, decent matchup, same strategy. Nothing else really changes for it. I'll put it at the high end of the locals menace. Somewhere around there, I think works for me. Sakazuki gets a little bit of support, similar to Kuzan with Ice Time. I mean, really, Sakazuki came back because Bandai knew that it coming back wouldn't really do anything with a lot of the original list that it was running being banned. I just don't think it's a good deck in my opinion. Some people disagree, but it's not one for me personally. Put him in the rogue category. So now going down, these should be pretty quick with some of these older leaders. The purple yellow, the Lakers Crocodile, won one of the first Chinois Cups, really out of nowhere, kind of unexpected. Looks like a pretty solid deck, solid matchups across the board. Gets support in 14 with 9-cost Boa, 6-cost Rayleigh, and the You'll Frighten Me event card. Maybe high variance somewhere around here. Green Purple Doflamingo, Don Quixote package doesn't really do a lot for him. Not being able to redirect life like the purple one does means it's not nearly as valuable for him. I wouldn't do anything with this leader personally. I think just play the purple one at this point. I would put this in the rogue category. We have now green yellow Arlong. When attacking, play out a 4-cost or less with a trigger. Outside of Shark Brick Fist, I don't think there's any real support for Arlong coming out anytime soon. If you're looking for yellow trigger decks, we have a lot of other great options now, and with it being a block 1 leader, it's more likely than not just going to fade out. I would just put this in the rogue category with a lot of these other guys here. Kuro I only included because there's a 7-cost Kuro that is technically support for him, but and what that does, it lets you play out a 6 cost or less East blue character, I believe. But I mean, if you're looking for a resand green character with Slash, just play Zoro. I think you're just better off. I'll put this just somewhere in Rogue. Blue Doflamingo. No blue support. Some of the 7 Warlord stuff is more so tailored for Jinbei than anything else. It's not terrible, but I think there's just better options than 14 at this point. Block 1 Leaders, so may end up just getting rotated out without anything really happening for it. Put it at the top of Rogue. A lot of the way this is categorized for Rogue, especially like mid to end, isn't really anything. I think maybe these could be something. But specifically for the Rogue category, I would just see it as Rogue. Maybe just don't play it, play something else unless you really want to play one of these leaders. Zoro. Could use the 7-cost Zoro that's coming up. I think the current Zoro style suits the leader better, and its leader ability has decent matchups and is very aggressive, can catch people off guard, especially newer players that maybe haven't even seen this leader since they've started. Just for that, I'll put it in the locals menace category. Maybe somewhere back here. Yeah, I'd put it above Kalgar. Then we have the last few leaders here. We have Red, Green, Law. Seems pretty interesting. Can use some of the new green support that's coming up. Is that enough? I'm not really sure. I'll put this in the untested category for now. Okay, I'm losing my voice here, but let's see if we can just knock out these last 4 leaders. First up is ST29 Luffy, which we'll be getting right when OP14 releases. The leader effect is a little bit underwhelming in my opinion, but it's still a 6-life leader. It's yellow. Lots of trigger potential, a lot of style potential, a lot of taking life potential. I think it's worth looking into. It's getting more support in EB03, so I'll just put it in the EB03 waiting room in the meantime, but I think for now, maybe there's someone that can find a version that's very trigger heavy again, stall heavy, finds ways to get life back a lot. It's a 6-life leader, right? I think that's worth looking into, so don't count it out, but waiting room for now. Maybe untested. Zoro Sanji, which is over here, I would say had a little bit of time in 12 and 13. AC and Emu matchups are still pretty rough for him. Restand effect is interesting. There's a lot of new green characters that are out, so maybe it's worth revisiting. Don't really know. For now, I'll just put it in the untested category, maybe somewhere higher up here, over like a Jinbei. You have the Red Yellow Sabo. I don't think it's really getting anything. Yellow support is interesting, but I don't know if it's enough to move the needle. Put it in the untested category back here. Then last but certainly not least is BY Luffy, the GOAT maybe a year ago. Got hit pretty heavily with some of the cards that were banned back in March. But with a lot of the yellow cards that are coming out in 14 and EB03, maybe someone will figure out a list to make this leader competitive, but otherwise I will not be missing seeing it anytime soon. So I will thankfully and graciously put this in the end of untested. Maybe it's in Rogue, but remains to be seen. Alright, so that's it for the video here. This is my take on the OP14 Western meta, what it's going to end up looking like. But until we actually get these cards available, this is just speculative. I'll update it as we go along. And if you made it to this point, I really appreciate the support. Any feedback you have on specific leaders, any comments, any insight that you're looking for, let me know. I'm happy to provide that. I did a lot of research to get this video set up, which is why it's a little bit later than I would normally be uploading. But I mean, yeah, like I said, just let me know your thoughts, what you like, what you don't like. And if you made it to this point and you still don't like the video, I mean, oh well, what can you do, right? Maybe next time.